Good morning, folks. Everything new under the sun. In light of recent events of the terrorist activities, which obviously every Christian should condemn, and certainly I condemn any killing of people. Those are all people who are loved by God, and that's what I need to remember, and that's what we all need to remember. These are all created humans, created in God's image, and He loves them all, and we are told the Great Commission is to reach the end of the world with the gospel of Christ. And so when these things happen, these are people who have lost their lives, who may not have, but who have lost the option to hear about Christ. But one thing that is interesting that you got to remember to balance out the equation is the great outcry on mainstream media about the terror attacks, and so it should be. There should be great media outcry. What you don't hear, though, is all the Christians being murdered around the world. I wonder if I can have these. Just look at some quick headlines here. I'm not going to get into these particular articles, but dozens of Christians slaughtered by Muslim militants. That's one example. I think there was another one up here. Mentally disabled Christian beaten, arrested after a Muslim bursts into his home, claiming he overheard this disabled man saying a blasphemous comment against Allah. And so you have these stories that are peppered into the daily news. Here's the news about the New Zealand terror attack. Now ISIS is calling on followers to take revenge for the New Zealand terror attack, and so you have this, not even tit for tat. I mean, anytime anything happens to people, a Muslim, they're going to call for a terrorist attack against them, basically, against the enemy. But there are so many Christians all around the world being persecuted. And again, this is not to downplay the murder of anybody, and it is murder. But it is to say that what mainstream media isn't showing you is the daily persecution, the daily deaths of Christians and Jews all around the world, across many Muslim countries. And so this is a daily thing where Christians by the dozens are being killed by Muslim militants. This happens to be in Nigeria. And of course the headline airs that yet this massacre has been completely ignored by mainstream media. So it's something you need to be aware of. Make sure you're understanding and seeing what the rest of the world, what is happening in the rest of the world. Christians are not the problem, and this guy who shot up the mosque in New Zealand wasn't a Christian, and he certainly wasn't acting in the name of Christianity. And you need to recognize that. You need to balance that. As a Christian, you need to look at the news, and the mainstream media is left-leaning. Obviously, we all know that. So you got to keep that in mind when you're looking at the news. All right, heading on to the news of the day here. This first one is from BBC.com, and it's about the Palestinians. Gaza economic protests expose cracks in Hamas's rule. So the Palestinians themselves, the civilians, are now protesting against Hamas, against their leadership, against the government, which is stealing their money and not providing jobs and paying money to murder families. And now the regular civilians are rising up against Hamas rule, which I think is pretty interesting. And this should be mainstream media news as well. Of course, you're not going to hear about it generally. It says in Gaza, it is no surprise to hear complaints about terrible living conditions. After all, the World Bank describes a local economy in free fall, with 70% unemployment among young people. It says, however, what has been extraordinary in recent days is that large crowds of Palestinians have been turning out on the streets to voice their frustration and even criticize Hamas. And Hamas is now coming in and tamping down these protests because they're starting to look bad. It says Hamas, the militant Islamic group which rules the Strip with an iron fist. Messages by the 14th of March movement have the slogan of "We want to live." It's a peaceful, popular youth movement, says Mumin al-Natur, one of the organizers, on his Facebook page. We're not political, and we don't want to change political systems, i.e. the Hamas government, I guess. I assume he's saying that because he doesn't want to get into too much trouble. He says, we just want to get our rights. We want jobs. We want to live. We want equality, dignity, and freedom. And I would suggest to you that's exactly what Israel would be happy to help push forward. And we know for any Palestinians or Arabs, Muslims in Israel, that's exactly what they get. They get jobs. They get the right to live. They get dignity. They get freedom. They get the right to vote for the government. And so they have all the rights. They have all the freedoms. Those who live under the Israeli government. But under the Hamas government, who is supposed to be taking care of them, they get none of this. And so the civilians are rising up. And again, these are the sorts of things you're not going to see on mainstream media. And you're not going to see this sort of news. This is on, I believe it's on debka.com, on BBC. Oh, JPost, I think, was the other site it was on. So this is all around the other news sites. But of course, you won't hear this in North America, you know, on left-leaning mainstream media news outlets. And it's important to be aware of, just like the news of the persecution of Christians all around the world. All right, going on. Here's the next one. An interesting setup. And you talk about Ezekiel 38, Gog Magog, the alliance. Gog leads Magog and the alliance of countries down on Israel in the last days. And so what do we have here? Further agreement and conferences between Iraq, Syria, Iran. It says Iraq, Syria, Iran hold tripartite meeting against U.S. in Syria. And this is at a time when the U.S. is getting out of Syria. Interesting that they're using this point in time to speak about this. We have shown our unity in this war and fighting together against enemies. That's Israel and the United States, the little Satan and the great Satan. Bashar Assad said, according to Iran's Tasnim News, it says Iranian Major General Mohammed met with his Iraqi counterpart and Syrian Defense Minister Ali Abdullah Ayyub to discuss opposition to the U.S. role in Syria, which is pretty slim right now. There's not much of a U.S. role in Syria. In what Iranian media called tripartite meeting, the meeting held a joint press conference in Damascus. Remember, Damascus is a key city. Isaiah 17 speaks of the city of Damascus being destroyed once and for all, becoming a ruinous heap. That hasn't happened yet. That's one of those future prophecies which has yet to be fulfilled. And when it is fulfilled, that will be a huge signpost, a huge milestone in end-time Bible prophecy. It goes on here. In the latest visible sign of an Iran-Iraq-Syria entente that will aid Iran's ambitions in the region and comes on the heels of a historic visit by Iranian President Hassan Rouhani to Iraq. It goes on. The Iranians stress that they want to pressure the U.S. to leave Syria, which, you know, and in large part they have left. The goal is to preserve national sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria, and the three countries will continue to work to defeat terrorists. And who do they call terrorists? Effectively, U.S. or U.S.-backed, supposedly backed terrorists working against the Bashar Assad government. So that's the situation in Iraq, and we see a further alliance of nations and governments, an agreement, an alliance that will eventually take the form of the alliance described in Ezekiel 38 and 39, and that's what we expect in the near future as we close in on 2.5 years, less than 2.5 years before the start of the 7-year tribulation, which means these battles have to have to happen soon. Before that. So this other article here in jpost.com, Iranian commander, all of Israel is now within reach of Hezbollah's missiles. So they've got all the technology there. I would suggest to you that this describes a completion, if you will, of armament of Hezbollah, of Hamas likely, of proxy groups around Israel, to the point where Iran is happy to come out and say, we have missiles that can cover all of Israel. I would suggest to you that this is the first item that needs to be completed before a larger war or offensive happens to cover Israel with missiles. Tehran deployed some of its warships to Bab el-Mandeb Strait, which connects the Red Sea to the Gulf of Aden. All of Israel is within the range of Hezbollah's missiles, commander of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard said in an interview on Iranian media Sunday. Says the status quo, and it's funny to say the status quo because it's the enemies of Israel that continue to change the status quo. The current status quo and the current capabilities of the resistance front of the Islamic Revolution are all the unique accomplishments of the Islamic Revolution, which cannot be verbally described, and they rather should be sensed, he says. Strange commentary by him. While they once dreamed of their territorial expansion, speaking of Israel, of their territorial expansion from the Nile River to the Euphrates, and they were after realizing this wish in the past 50 years, today we can say that they have been unable to expand their land even for an inch. It says they have even lost some of their territories that they already occupied and are under full siege from all around their borders, it says. It says Israel and Hezbollah have last fought a war, the Second Lebanon War in 2006, and since then morphed from a guerrilla group to an army with a set hierarchy and procedures. So Iran is expounding on its progress in creating basically what they're describing as an official army, not just terrorist groups, not just individual players, but proper proxy armies with leaders, generals, troops, classes of troops, etc., a full hierarchy of command and control. It says with the help of Iran, it has rebuilt its arsenal since 2006, and hundreds of thousands of short-range rockets and several thousand more missiles can reach deeper into Israel. To put it in a nutshell, he says, we can say that the enemy has not been successful in the region, and all its plots and operations have ended up with nothing but failure for them and success for the Islamic Revolution and the resistance fronts. Read resistance front as Iran's proxy armies, that being through terror groups, known terror groups on the world stage, Hezbollah, Hamas. It says Israel's air defenses currently include Iron Dome, designed to shoot down short-range rockets, the Arrow system, which intercepts ballistic missiles outside the Earth's atmosphere, and David's Sling missile defense system, which is designed to intercept tactical ballistic missiles, medium to long-range rockets, as well as cruise missiles fired from a range of 40 to 300 kilometers. So Israel has a bunch of technological defenses against these. Iran's goal is to get enough missiles to the point where the sheer number of missiles fired at an appointed time by Iran overwhelms the missile defense systems of Israel. It says, in early March, the IDF announced the United States deployed its THAAD anti-ballistic missile defense system in Israel as part of its month-long joint drill. Built by Lockheed Martin, the THAAD system is considered one of the most advanced systems of its kind in the world, and during the drill it will be added to the existing Israeli air defense systems. So Israel has a multi-layered 3 and 4 different missile air defense systems, which hopefully will take care of all these missiles. In the meantime, though, Hezbollah, Hamas, terror groups, Iran's proxies around Israel are building up thousands and upon thousands of rockets, which could fire at the command of Iran all at the same time, and in theory, overwhelm them. Now, I assume Israel has plans and has built into it logic to deal with an attempt to overwhelm its defenses. And you see that in Iron Dome, where Iron Dome will first calculate the ballistic trajectory, and if it's not calculated to hit a public area, it doesn't waste a missile on it, and then it goes to the next one that's fired. So there is logic built into Iron Dome as an example, so that the system isn't overwhelmed by, in terms of taking out missiles, which would otherwise land in the middle of a field, for example, and won't hurt civilians. That being said, what is the limit? How could it be overwhelmed? And certainly that is Iran's attempt. That's Iran's goal, to basically overwhelm them with thousands of missiles. And so at this time you have this Iranian commander coming out and saying, we are done basically. We have missiles in apparently enough quantity and enough selection, range, diversity, that all of Israel is now within the range. And that's going to be a turning point. Like I say, the first level is to get all your proxies set up, and get order installed, get commanders on the ground who can be controlled and commanded from a central command post. The Iranian general is saying they have that command structure now. The second one is to get enough missiles and weapons on the ground ready for a war with Israel. And the Iranian general is now saying they have the missiles in place now. So they have the command and control structure, they have the missiles, they have the weapons in place. What's next? Next is boots on the ground effectively, and a lining up of Iranian soldiers, I would suggest to you. Not only that, but they also have air forces ready in terms of drones modeled after the U.S. drone that they captured. And so they can send in swarms of military drones to come in, wave after wave after the missiles, or even at the same time as the missiles. So the Bible describes a situation where there's a great aircraft. Let me see. Where is that described? Where I think is that in Ezekiel 39? It describes a situation where there's a great wave of aircraft. Let me see. Let me mute this for a second. See if I can find this reference, because it even references Ezekiel 38, that there will be a great army in the sky. Basically, what are the terms it uses here? I will see if I can find it in Ezekiel 38. It says, "Behold, I am against you, Gog, Magog." Let's see. "Prepare thyself, you and your companies. After many days you will be visited. You will ascend, coming like a storm, covering the land like a cloud, you and all your troops and many peoples with you." So check this out. Unmute. So this is BibleGateway.com. This is Ezekiel 38. Look at verse 9. "I will ascend, coming like a storm." So where is a storm? A storm is generally part of the sky, obviously. "Covering you like a cloud." And that's also in the sky. So that's coming over. That's coming in the air. That's not coming like a swarm of, wildebeests on the ground. It says covering the land like a cloud. So what covers the land like a cloud? Well, missiles are one example of that, but only for a short time. It says you, all your troops with you, and many peoples with you. That's the alliance of nations that comes with you. But covered like a cloud, you look at the drone setup that they have. I did the article the other day. I think they had 50 drones modeled after U.S. military drones in large in large test runs of all these drones flying at once, carrying weaponry, potentially even being suicide drones. And what are they going to do? They're going to cover the land like a cloud. You're going to have 50 drones or 100 drones flying over the land of Israel like a cloud, coming like a storm. And so I would submit to you that the drones and the aircraft that will be used fulfill this verse and this part of this Ezekiel 38 passage even more clearly. So when you see the news about the drone capability of Iran now, now you can see covering like a cloud. That makes a lot more sense, literally, because it could cover Israel like a cloud in the sky all around. And maybe they would even look like a cloud. There would be so many of them if they are white, you know, and there are hundreds of them in a cluster, in a swarm. They would look like a big cloud moving over Israel. So you look at the words here spoken of in the book of Ezekiel 38, and you look at the end time events coming, and certainly I think this could be what it describes. Let's see here. It talks about the flotilla, large-scale exercises with the U.S. and Israel. Yeah, I think that was it. So I'll end it there. I won't blather on too much, but I do think Ezekiel 38 is interesting with the terminology about the cloud, and we know about the Iranian drones. Let me just, to finish off this video, let me just pull up that article about the Iranian drones. I think it's key. Iranian drones. Let's see. Iran is a drone power. Let me see here. Oh yes, Iran pumps up massive offensive exercise with as many as 50 drones. And you know they're building more because they know drones can get in there. So this is from Ars Technica. And like I say, I'll end with this. Let's pull this up here. Let me go out of reading mode because there's an image here. Ars Technica. Iran pumps up massive offensive exercise with as many as 50 drones, knockoff of the U.S. RQ-170 Predator drones, included in a coordinated strike test. So they're talking about coordinating them, letting them fly all at once, coordinated, coming like a swarm, like a cloud, just as it describes in Ezekiel 38. So Iran Revolutionary Guard staged what Iranian state media described as massive drone drills on March 14th, a couple days ago, including a coordinated offensive of dozens of flying wing drones captured by Iran, copies of the U.S. RQ-170 Sentinel captured by Iran in 2011. It says a total of about 50 drones, which would look like a cloud in the sky. Look at these things. If you saw 50 of these flying, and I'm sure they're going to have more of these as they train them and code them with logic to fly in large swarms. Total of 50 drones, including the Sege unmanned combat aerial vehicles based on the RQ-170's flying wing design, were used in a coordinated airstrike on training targets 1,000 kilometers from their launch site. So I would submit to you that this is part of the fulfillment of Ezekiel 38. I always wondered about this. How would you cover the land like a cloud? Because a cloud is in the sky. Would there be other ways to describe an army on the ground invading and covering the land? Probably there would be. Maybe like locusts, for example, which do fly, but also generally cover the area when they're eating all the the grains and grasses, etc. They're on the ground. But this says coming like a storm. Storms in the sky. Covering them like a cloud, clouds in the sky. And then it adds you and all. It says you and all your troops and many peoples with you. So combat troops on the ground as well. So something to think about, guys. I will leave it there. Where are we? Whoa, 23 minutes. It's a long video. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll leave it there, and we'll see you guys in the next video.